Picture this: someone tells you their boss put them in the hot seat during a meeting, and for a split second your brain pictures an actual chair, glowing red, scorching the poor guy's trousers. Or maybe a friend mentions a story that's hot off the press, and you wonder if journalists are somehow baking their articles in an oven before publishing them. Sounds ridiculous, right? But if English isn't your first language, these images genuinely flash through your mind before logic kicks in. I'm Ja, and today we're doing something a little different. We're taking the word hot, a word you already know, a word tied to temperature, spice, and summer afternoons, and we're going to strip away everything you thought you understood about it. Because in English, hot rarely has anything to do with heat at all. It shows up in business meetings, in gossip between friends, in newsrooms, in arguments, in moments of panic, and in stories about chases and competition. So pour yourself something warm, settle in, and let's turn up the temperature on your vocabulary, not literally, of course. Let's start with a phrase you've probably heard in interviews, press conferences, or courtroom dramas: being in the hot seat. Forget chairs entirely. This phrase has nothing to do with furniture and everything to do with pressure. When someone is in the hot seat, they're stuck in an uncomfortable, high-stakes position, usually because they're being questioned, challenged, or held accountable for something. Think about a company's CEO standing in front of a room full of reporters after a scandal breaks. Every question feels like an attack, every answer gets picked apart. That executive isn't sitting on burning metal, they're sitting under the weight of scrutiny, and that's the hot seat. Or imagine a team manager whenever a project fails. Even if the mistake wasn't entirely their fault, they're the one who has to explain it, defend it, and fix it. As the manager, he's always in the hot seat when something goes wrong, captures that perfectly. It's not about blame alone, it's about being the person forced to answer for it. Nobody enjoys being there. It's tense, it's uncomfortable, and it tests how well you can think under pressure. So here's a challenge for you. Think of a moment, maybe at work, maybe in school, maybe even in a family conversation, when you felt like you were in the hot seat. Write your own sentence using the phrase and drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to see how you'd use it in real life, because that's how a phrase actually sticks in your memory, not by memorizing a definition, but by attaching it to something personal. Now let's shift from pressure to speed, because our next phrase is all about freshness and timing. Hot off the press. You know that feeling when your coffee or tea is poured straight from the kettle, still steaming, still at its absolute best. That's the emotional core of this phrase, except we're not talking about drinks, we're talking about information. When something is described as hot off the press, it means it's brand new, freshly released, the kind of update that hasn't had time to grow old or get passed around yet. In the world of journalism, this is what people call breaking news, the very latest headline, the update everyone's scrambling to share before anyone else does. And here's something that makes the phrase even more interesting. It isn't just a clever metaphor, it actually comes from real printing presses. Decades ago, when newspapers rolled off industrial printing machines, the freshly printed pages would still be physically warm from the printing process itself. Readers who grabbed the very first copies were, quite literally, holding paper that was hot off the press. Over time, the phrase stuck around long after most newspapers stopped being warm to the touch, and it evolved into a general expression for anything brand new and urgent. You'll hear it used in sentences like, "This news is hot off the press, the company just announced a new product," where the speaker is emphasizing that this information is fresh, immediate, and worth paying attention to right now. Or picture a more dramatic example: the actor was removed from the set. This is hot off the press, which signals that whoever's speaking just found out and is passing along the update in real time before it's had a chance to spread everywhere else. It's the language of urgency, the language of "you need to hear this right now, because it just happened." Notice something about both of these phrases so far: they take an everyday physical sensation, the discomfort of heat or the warmth of something freshly made, and repurpose it to describe emotional or social situations. That's the trick behind almost every hot idiom in English. And once you see that pattern, the rest of these phrases start to feel far less random and far more logical. In the next part, we're moving from pressure and freshness into something messier, quite literally. We'll talk about what it means to find yourself in hot water and why nobody in their right mind wants to be handed a hot potato. Stick around because these next two phrases are the ones you'll hear constantly in everyday conversation, especially when things go wrong or when nobody wants to take responsibility. Let's talk about water for a moment, not the refreshing kind you drink on a hot afternoon, but the kind that scalds you the second it touches your skin. Imagine accidentally dipping your hand into a pot that's been boiling on the stove. Your instinct is to pull back immediately because that discomfort is sharp and immediate. Now transfer that same sensation to a situation involving people rather than pots, and you've got the idiom "in hot water." This phrase describes being caught in an uncomfortable, often stressful situation, and almost always it's a situation you brought on yourself. Maybe you missed a deadline at work and instead of owning up to it honestly, you told a small lie to buy yourself some time. That lie might feel like a clever shortcut in the moment, but it rarely stays hidden. Sooner or later, someone notices the inconsistency, and suddenly you're not just dealing with a missed deadline, you're dealing with a trust problem too. That's exactly the kind of scenario this phrase captures. Consider the sentence, "He is in hot water with his boss because he missed the client meeting." Notice how the phrase doesn't just describe a mistake, it describes the fallout from that mistake. The tension, the awkward conversations, the consequences that follow. Or think about this one, "If you keep lying, you'll end up in hot water." It's practically a warning wrapped inside an idiom, and honestly, that warning holds up in real life. Lying might feel like the easy way out when you're cornered, but it tends to snowball into something far more complicated than the original problem ever was. So next time you're tempted to cover something up instead of just explaining it honestly, remember this phrase, because hot water has a way of scalding you right when you least expect it. Sticking with the kitchen theme for a second, let's talk about potatoes, specifically the kind you should never try to hold with your bare hands. If you've ever pulled a potato straight out of boiling water or a hot oven, you know the reflex. You can't hold on to it for more than a second or two before you're forced to drop it, shake your hands, and let it cool. That physical reflex is exactly what the idiom hot potato is built on. When we call a topic or a situation a hot potato, we mean it's controversial, sensitive, or difficult enough that people actively avoid dealing with it. Nobody wants to be the one holding it, because holding it means facing the consequences, the criticism, or the backlash that comes with it. Think about workplace situations. There's often that one difficult client everyone quietly avoids, passing the responsibility from person to person like they're literally tossing a hot potato around the office. Or think bigger on a national scale, the issue of corruption has become a hot potato for the government. Politicians often dodge this topic entirely, not because it isn't important, but because addressing it directly risks damaging their public image, just like grabbing an actual hot potato risks burning your hand. Here's another everyday example. That argument is a real hot potato. Let's not bring it up again. This is the kind of thing you might say about a disagreement within a friend group or a family, a topic so charged that everyone silently agrees it's safer left untouched. So the next time you notice people awkwardly changing the subject, dodging a question, or passing responsibility onto someone else, ask yourself, is this a hot potato? Chances are it is. What's fascinating about both of these phrases is how naturally they map onto real emotional experiences. Hot water isn't just uncomfortable, it's the kind of discomfort you can't ignore, the kind that forces immediate reaction. And a hot potato isn't just something you avoid, it's something you actively pass along because keeping it in your hands for too long guarantees you'll get burned. English is full of these little physical metaphors, and once you start noticing them, you'll realize native speakers use them constantly, almost without thinking. That's actually the real goal here, not just memorizing definitions, but training your brain to recognize the emotional logic behind each phrase, so that when you hear it in a movie, a podcast, or a conversation with a colleague, it clicks instantly instead of leaving you confused. Now here's where things get a little more personal and a little more relatable. Because our next phrase deals with something all of us have felt at some point, that rush of anger and embarrassment that creeps up your neck when something frustrating happens completely out of your control. Picture being stuck in traffic on your way to an important meeting, watching the minutes tick by, knowing there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. That simmering frustration, that heat rising toward your collar, has an actual name in English, and it's exactly where we're headed next. In the coming part, we'll unpack what it means to be hot under the collar, and then we'll move into the thrill of a chase, exploring what it really means to be hot on someone's heels. These next two phrases shift us away from mistakes and controversy and into emotion and pursuit, so stay with me. Because the story of hot is only getting more interesting from here. Part 3 progressed through idioms toward final section. Anger doesn't usually arrive all at once. It builds slowly, starting as a small irritation and climbing steadily until it reaches your face, your neck, your collar. That's precisely the image behind our next phrase, hot under the collar. When someone is hot under the collar, they're feeling a mix of anger, frustration, and sometimes embarrassment, usually triggered by something unfair or unexpected. Think about that traffic scenario again. You're already running late for something important. Every red light feels personal, and by the time you arrive, you're not just late, you're seething. That rising heat, that tightness in your chest and neck is exactly what this phrase is describing. It's not calm annoyance. It's the kind of frustration that shows on your face, whether you want it to or not. Take this example. He got hot under the collar when he found out the seminar was canceled at the last moment. Notice the suddenness in that sentence. The frustration isn't gradual here. It's triggered instantly by disappointing news, especially after he probably prepared for it. Or consider this one, he got hot under the collar when he was yelled at for no reason. This version adds another layer: injustice. Being blamed for something you didn't do doesn't just frustrate you, it stings, and that combination of anger and unfairness is exactly the emotional territory this phrase covers. So here's something worth thinking about. When was the last time you were hot under the collar? Maybe it was a canceled flight, an unfair comment from a coworker, or a plan that fell apart at the worst possible moment. Drop that story in the comments, because chances are someone else has felt exactly the same frustration in a strikingly similar situation. Now let's shift gears completely from anger to pursuit, because our next phrase belongs in the middle of a chase scene. Picture an action movie, the hero sprinting through narrow alleyways, leaping over obstacles, closing the distance on the villain just barely staying out of reach. That relentless, close pursuit is exactly what it means to be hot on someone's heels. This phrase describes staying extremely close behind someone or something, whether that's a literal chase, a race, or even competition in business. It carries urgency and intensity. You're not just following someone, you're practically breathing down their neck. Think of a police scenario. The police were hot on the thief's heels but couldn't catch them. Even though the thief got away, the phrase makes clear just how close the pursuit actually was: inches, not miles, separated them. Or picture a business setting instead of a street chase. Our competitors are hot on our heels. We need to step up our game. Here, there's no literal running involved, but the emotional intensity is identical. A rival company is catching up fast, closing the gap. And that pressure demands immediate action. In short, being hot on someone's heels always signals closeness, urgency, and pressure, whether the pursuit is physical or professional. Notice how these last two phrases, despite covering completely different emotions, actually share something important. They both describe intensity that builds until it becomes impossible to ignore. Anger simmers until it reaches your collar. Pursuit tightens until the gap nearly disappears. English idioms with hot consistently capture this idea of something reaching a boiling point, a moment where a feeling or a situation becomes too strong to stay hidden or too close to escape. That pattern is worth remembering because it'll help you guess the meaning of other hot idioms even before anyone explains them to you. From here, we're moving into territory that's a little more lighthearted, a little more about confidence and reputation rather than frustration or urgency. Up next, we're going to meet the people English speakers call hot shots, the confident, highly skilled individuals who often walk into a room already knowing they're the best at what they do. And right alongside that phrase, we'll explore timing itself through one of the most practical idioms in this entire list, knowing exactly when to strike while the iron is hot. These two phrases are about seizing opportunities and recognizing talent, both incredibly useful concepts whether you're talking about your career, your team, or even just a moment in daily life where hesitation could cost you something valuable. So let's keep the momentum going because the next stretch of phrases is where things start getting genuinely useful for real conversations, at work and interviews. And beyond, Part 4 Charted Progression through Idioms and Colloquial Expressions. Charted progression through idioms and colloquial expressions. Every workplace has one, that person who walks in already radiating confidence, the one whose reputation seems to arrive in the room before they do. In English, we call this kind of person a hot shot. The phrase refers to someone who's highly skilled, talented, or exceptionally confident in a particular field. Someone widely regarded as being among the best at what they do. But there's an interesting twist buried inside this phrase. While it often carries genuine admiration, it can also carry a hint of criticism, especially when that confidence tips over into arrogance. A hot shot isn't just skilled, they usually know they're skilled and sometimes they make sure everyone else knows it too. Consider this example: the company hired some tech hotshot to improve their software. Here, the phrase is fairly neutral. Even positive, it simply signals that the company brought in someone with serious expertise, someone capable of solving problems others couldn't. But now compare that to this sentence: don't act like a hot shot just because you got a high score. Suddenly the tone shifts entirely. This version isn't complimenting skill, it's calling out excessive pride, warning someone not to let one small success inflate their ego. That's the beauty of this idiom. The same word can shift from praise to mild criticism depending entirely on context and tone. And learning to read that context is part of what makes you sound like a genuinely fluent English speaker, rather than someone who just memorized a dictionary definition. From confidence, let's move to timing because our next phrase is arguably one of the most practical idioms you'll ever learn, one that applies to business, relationships, opportunities, and everyday decision-making alike. Picture a blacksmith working at a forge, hammer in hand, metal glowing orange from the heat. That blacksmith doesn't wait around. The moment the iron reaches the right temperature, they strike immediately, shaping it while it's soft and workable. Wait too long and the iron cools, hardens, and becomes nearly impossible to shape without reheating it all over again. That single image is the entire foundation of the idiom strike while the iron is hot. It means taking action precisely when the moment is right, without hesitation, without unnecessary delay. Timing in this idiom isn't just important, it's everything. Consider this example: if you like the house, make an offer now. You should strike while the iron is hot. Here, the underlying message is urgency mixed with opportunity. Hesitate too long, and someone else might buy that house first. Or think about a business scenario: the idea is trending now, so we need to strike while the iron is hot and launch our product. This captures something every entrepreneur instinctively understands: trends fade, attention shifts, and windows of opportunity don't stay open forever. Waiting for the perfect moment sometimes means missing the only moment that actually mattered. So whenever you find yourself hesitating on something time-sensitive, whether it's a job offer, an opportunity, or even a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, ask yourself honestly: is this my moment to strike while the iron is hot, or am I just making excuses to delay? There's something genuinely satisfying about how these two phrases work together. A hot shot is someone who's already mastered their craft, someone who recognizes opportunity almost instinctively. And striking while the iron is hot is exactly the instinct that separates people who seize opportunities from people who watch them slip away. Confidence without timing often leads to missed chances, and timing without confidence often leads to hesitation. Together, they paint a picture of what it actually takes to succeed, not just talent alone, but talent paired with the courage to act at exactly the right moment. Now, from confidence and calculated timing, we're about to shift into something far messier, both literally and figuratively. Life isn't always about perfect timing and polished skill. Sometimes, life is chaotic, disorganized, and completely out of control, and English has a phrase specifically designed to capture that feeling too. In the next part, we'll dig into what it means to call something or someone a hot mess, and we'll finish by exploring the anxious, flustered feeling of being hot and bothered. These final two phrases bring us back down from the world of ambition and success into something far more human and relatable. The everyday chaos and stress that all of us experience, no matter how skilled or confident we might otherwise be. So stick around, because we're heading straight into the messiest, most emotionally honest part of this list.